So you can see here the list of frequently made mistakes that I posted to Piazza the other day. Couple things to start off with: make sure that you document your code. Some people are doing a great job of that. Thank you very much. Other people are putting pretty much no comments whatsoever. You will lose major points if you don't comment your code. So make sure you comment your code and explain what it is that you think you're doing. Secondly, make sure that you put the scoped array.cpp file in the source folder, SRC, and not in the include folder. And this is just the way that the projects are typically laid out in CMake-based projects. So there's typically a SRC folder, and that's where the .cpp files go, both template and non-template CPP files. And then there's an include folder, and that's where the .h files go, both template and non-template files. And that's just kind of the convention. Obviously, it's not the end of the world if you change them around, but just to keep things in one place so it makes it easier for us to grade the assignments and to know where things are, and for you to get accustomed to the sort of best practices and common conventions in writing C++ code, please follow that convention. All right, now let's go ahead and jump into issues with the implementation itself. So here's sort of an amalgamation of common mistakes I saw with the class definition of scoped array. And some people seem to get confused, and they were trying to put the get count and get array count methods in the scoped array class. They don't belong there. Those are really the methods that are intended for use by the, or intended to be defined by the allocation tracker. In fact, they should be defined by the allocation tracker. So you don't need to put those particular methods in your file. Let's see. Make sure that you define both const and non-const operator subscript methods. We talked about this the other day in the video where I gave you tips on how to do this. So if you're confused and wonder what the difference is between the const and the non-const versions of operator subscript, just go back and watch that video. It's up on my YouTube channel and also linked into our class website. And I put the link here, but it's easy enough to just go to the class website and you'll find what you need to do. This is kind of a weird half-breed, if you will, half-baked, I guess is a better word for it, where we have operator subscript that's const, but also returning a non-const. So that's not what we want to do. Then also make sure you use the proper syntax for templates. A lot of people made this mistake. It's one of those things that the compiler's going to kind of be lax for you, but you really need to get used to writing it correctly. So whenever you pass parameters, as we do here, make sure that you do stuff like this, as opposed to the way I'm showing it here. You need to put the template syntax in there. And this won't bite you for here because we're kind of ignoring those methods, but it's not a good habit to get into because there will be situations where it really matters, and then you don't want it to not compile at some point. Because of the fact that you don't have to worry about having the, because you don't need to worry about defining the methods get count and get array count and so on, you don't need to put the data members inside the class itself. Please don't hard code the path name for your scoped array.cpp file. Instead, just go ahead and say /source/scoped array.cpp. That's what you need to put at the towards the bottom of your scoped array.h file. Also, for this case, you shouldn't need to include the scoped array.h in the scoped array.cpp file. You typically in C++ with templates, you include the CPP file at the end of the .h file or towards the end of the .h file, but you don't need to put the .h file on the .cpp file unless you get like compile errors, which sometimes happens. But actually, I take it back. They're not errors. They're just the compiler interactive development environment doesn't know what the types are, so it'll do some funny things to your formatting. But your code will, in fact, compile because it'll see it by the time it goes to compile it. Make sure that you use the correct names for your scoped guards, for the inclusion guards, both for the .h file and the .cpp file. And as usual, they should be sort of like the namespace, if any, followed by the name of the file and then also, of course, whether it's an H or a CPP. So take a look at all the many examples I've used so far that have done this. And if for some reason you see me being inconsistent in any of my examples and not putting the inclusion guards, let me know and I'll go ahead and fix that, because it should be included in all the templates and all the header files and so on. Okay, notice something that's kind of left over from last time's frequently made mistakes. It was a mistake last time, it's still a mistake now. You don't need to assign a null pointer in the destructor. That's unnecessary. The object, once it's destructed, should never be accessed. And if it is accessed, that's got deeper problems than this. And so you don't need to put the null pointer there. It just confuses people who are maintaining the code. Another thing, this is incredibly minor, but I'm just saying it because it's probably a good habit to get into. You don't need to put these extra parens here. You can just leave them like that. You don't need to have the extra parens. A number of people are not correctly checking in the reset method whether or not they're doing self-resetting. So you need to guard against self-resetting, just like you need to guard against self-assignment. And so make sure that you do the little same trick there to see if you're trying to self-reset, and in which case you just ignore, you don't have to do anything. And also, this code is missing something very important. It's going to leak memory. So make sure that you properly release the memory that you're holding before you reset the pointer to a new value. Otherwise, you've got a memory leak. You don't need, I'm not quite sure why someone implemented operator not. You don't need to do that. All you need to do is implement the Boolean conversion operator, and then it'll take the result that comes back from that and then negate that. But you don't need to implement operator not. And then finally, you don't need to have a method called NonCost Method. This is intended, again, to come out of the allocation tracker. And so this particular mechanism is unnecessary. You can remove this method and your code should compile and it should pass all the tests. Okay, so those are the main things I saw. I think most people have very little to do on assignment number 2. And so you should be able to finish up very quickly. I gave you until Monday to turn it in, primarily so that you wouldn't have to try to do the quiz, study for the quiz, and get this done today. But I don't think you're going to have to spend a lot of time cranking away on this over the weekend. It should take you, half an hour or so, if that, to fix most of the problems that I saw.